Poking the Three Bears, another look at Suno, and questions in the air. Welcome to the Unlimited Supply Podcast, your daily music business TLDR in your ear, powered by a constant onslaught of stuff to be parsed, and brought to you by NoDisc, helping music technology and finance companies navigate the music industry in partnership with Digital Music News. It's June 6th, 2025. I'm Lars Murray. It's Finance Friday, but before we dive into the shallow money trench, of course, it is Finance Friday today, but lately every day feels like AI Day. Both of the major generative AI music platforms, that would be Suno and Udio, have ticked off the industry over the past year with shady-seeming AI training practices and PR howlers, and they've dug themselves a pretty deep hole to climb out of in the hearts and minds of labels, publishers, artists, and songwriters. I've clowned particularly hard on Suno over their bold, infringe and settle strategy and their language about that, as has our occasional guest and axe grinder Howie SInger. And I've used both Suno and Udio to create songs about training data fouls. Of course, this week it came out that the majors were negotiating with both platforms, which is a progress of sorts, but doesn't answer the questions of how or if artists and songwriters are going to get paid. But I do have to hand one to Suno today. They took the time to reach out directly and engage, which is worthy of a little respect and attention. They walked me through the demo of their latest iteration, and honestly, as tech, it's pretty cool and moving in the direction of being a legitimate artist tool. Just calling balls and strikes here. In general, I'm less troubled by the existence of these platforms than by their compensation schemes, or lack thereof, and training data practices, which are still highly problematic, if not, as I said above, downright shady. But in the conversation, Suno indicated that they are starting to take these questions a lot more seriously than I knew, or frankly, than they've shown in the past. Still a long way to go here, and artists and songwriters are going to have to be vigilant and loud to protect their interests. But the conversation left me a little more optimistic about the Gen AI future. I have no idea if Udio is thinking the same way. Your move, Udio. If all that's making you feel a little better about AI, well, here comes Virginie Berger to cure you of that. She's been appointed an eloquent critic of AI platforms over the past year plus. Virginie recently announced that she was leaving her gig at Matchtune, I'm assuming to lean in more to her advocacy role. Her latest post at her Don't Believe the Hype newsletter is called AI Isn't Your Savior, It's Your Replacement. The post is a great companion piece to Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei's warning earlier this week about AI and the labor market. Remember, that call was coming from inside the house. There's only two choices here with AI, fight it or learn to live with it, and I think the latter is probably inevitable. But living with it doesn't mean letting it run rampant over copyright and human dignity. If that doesn't brighten your Friday, now let's dive into the shallow money trench where thieves and pimps run free. Goldman Sachs released their Music in the Air report on Wednesday, and they might as well have called it Questions in the Air. The trades were on it like a pack of hungry termites, or maybe the termites are in the foundation of the previous two Goldman Sachs Music in the Air reports, which projected robust growth based largely on continued growth in streaming. Well, apparently that growth doesn't look so assured anymore. If you've been watching the quarterly earnings reports of the major labels over the past year, you surely didn't miss the flattening in the streaming growth curve in mature markets like the US and Europe. And given that those are more profitable markets than emerging markets, well, it's not hard to see that maybe Goldman was guilty of a little irrational exuberance. The flatness was offset somewhat by growth in physical, and it's not like the industry hasn't seen this coming too. Everyone's talking about superfans and direct-to-fan initiatives, so it's entirely possible that new usage patterns, new platforms, and efficient extraction of monies from the pockets of consumers and more efficient payment systems could offset the newly lethargic-looking streaming market. But in spite of that potential, Goldman revised its growth estimates downward. So many questions. Will this affect the heretofore booming catalog market? Have the majors already baked these numbers into their headcount reductions, or are there more to come? Will artists and songwriters be able to claim a larger share of a not quite shrinking but not quite growing so fast pie? Did anybody get fired over at Goldman for missing the mark the last 2 years? Doubt it. So many questions and so many more. Unlike past Music in the Air reports, Goldman doesn't have this prominently displayed on its website, but over at Digital Music News, Paul Resnikoff took this one on himself in some detail. Bang, bang, that was fast. Yesterday, I downloaded Fever for the first time. Yesterday, we talked about Fever having raised $100 million, one rod, in capital to fund its growth, and not a day later, Fever announced it was deploying some of that one rod by acquiring the ticketing service for hipsters, Dice. Now again, I never used Fever before yesterday, but I've used Dice a lot. Guess that makes me a hipster. Touché. Fever has just poked the Live Nation bear, or rather maybe the three bears if you count AEG and CTS Eventim over in Europe. Granted, I don't know a lot about Fever. I don't know if it had any relationship with Live Nation prior to this, but if they do, well, I've got a little experience in these matters, and I don't think I'm going far out on a limb if I predict that the consequences of Fever adding ticketing will be rapid and asymmetric. Sometimes it's better to be Switzerland, and I guess Fever's going to find out. It's entirely possible that the Fever-Dice combo will emerge as a robust competitor to its larger counterparts, but history suggests that the big guys are going to pull out all the stops to crush it. It's not just about scale, it's also about relationships and all of the ridiculous complexity of things like venue relations. Consumers should certainly be rooting for Fever and Dice's success. At the same time, I'm not sure I would make any long-term bets on it. Those three bears are rather large. All opinions are welcome. Call me out on this dubious assertion. Ethan Millman has the story at The Hollywood Reporter. The very cool karaoke app Singa, that's Singa, announced this week that it had done a licensing deal with Warner Music Group. Congrats to Singa CEO and human billboard Atte Hujanen, sorry if I mangled your pronunciation, for locking down a big swath of catalog. And a few weeks back, LP geek institution Vinyl Me Please collapsed in a flaming pile of wreckage following egregious mismanagement, unfilled orders, and customers left high and dry. Well, someone stepped in and bought that pile of flaming wreckage. The acquirer is VYNL, that's VYNL. Hopefully Vinyl and key execs Nick Alt and Nicole Muhoberac will be able to set things right. No numbers on that deal, but WIllman does have an extensive interview with Nick and Emily over at Variety. And it's about to get a lot easier to license music from the Cars. Last year, Primary Wave did a deal with the Rick Ocasek estate for publishing, and now it's expanded the deal to the band in full. As we noted earlier this week with regard to Taylor Swift, controlling full spectrum rights really greases the rails for licensing. The size of the deal was not specified. It was referred to only as a multi-million-dollar deal, and I would certainly hope so. I think it's safe to say it was somewhere between a Rod and a Queener. And that's another Finance Friday. Support for the Unlimited Supply podcast is provided by Music Services, a division of CSAC Music Group. Music Services is pioneering technology, licensing, and administration solutions to meet the growing needs of record labels and music publishers worldwide. For more on Music Services, visit musicservices.com and be sure to listen to my interviews with John Rasso and Lynn Lowe in this feed. And by Hangout.fm. Hangout by Turntable Labs is the new social listening platform where users connect, discover new music, and play over 100 million songs with their friends and family. If you like what you hear, please hit that follow button wherever you get your pods. I live for your praise and encouragement, but don't just tell me. Seriously, it's much more helpful if you drop us a rating and or a review on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or Spotify, and tell a friend or three. Now, since the beginning of Unlimited Supply, I've been saying it takes 5 times for anything in digital music to sink in. But I was talking with marketing ace and friend of the pod, Suzy Schultz, the other day, and she said that number has changed. It's not 5, it's more like 21. I thank you, Suzy, though anyone who thinks I'm already too repetitive may not be so happy. Links are in the show notes, but you can also visit unlimitedsupplypod.com to sign up for our newsletter, to tell us what you think about the show, to suggest feature ideas, to feed us info, to feed us lunch, to call us out on our dubious assertions, and to tell us what we're missing out on. In the words of the great philosopher Eduardo Rivadavia, don't let your short-term greed get in the way of your long-term greed. And remember, in this business, no conflict means no interest.